Hi and welcome to Maths class. Today we're looking at solving worded problems using algebra, and I'm going to take you through not just how we go about solving the problems, but also that really important aspect of doing everything we need to do to make sure we get all the marks on the test. It's pretty important, and also things like checking your work and so on. So the first thing I want to show you, I know it's a lot of steps. We've got 7 steps to make sure we've got everything done. And I really want to encourage you to get into the habit of maybe jotting these steps down. Just take a moment to pause the video and jot them down. You can summarize them if you want. But if you get into the habit of every time you're solving a worded problem that you follow these steps, after a while it will become a habit, and then when you get into the test you'll do it properly automatically and you won't skip anything and you get all the marks that you're supposed to get. All right, and I really want you to get into that habit now in year 9 so that by the time you get into year 12 it's already a habit and you're doing everything you need to do. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to double check every time. What is the question asking for? Just take 1 or 2 seconds to think, to consciously think, what does the question want me to do? At the same time, I'm going to define my variable. And usually what the question is asking for will help me to decide. So if the question says, what is Isabella's age? Then at step 2, I'm going to say, let I equal Isabella's age. I'll define my variable as Isabella's age. All right. Step 3, write all the information in terms of the variable. So if I'm then told something about her brother's age, I'm going to rewrite his brother's age in terms of I if I can, and so on. Make an equation. That's going to be slightly different each time, but I want to try and make an equation because at step 5, I'm going to try and solve that equation. And that will give me, in my example I've just said, a value for I. Step 6, answer the question. So if I found Isabella's age is 6, then I'll write, when I answer the question, Isabella is 6 years old, for example. Step 7, check that your answer works with the original words of the question. It's no good checking your work with your own equation because if your equation's wrong, you won't find the problem. You've got to go back and check that everything works with the words. We're going to see all these steps in action as we go through this worked example. So here's my example. 3 children earn weekly pocket money. Kevin earns $3 more than Danuta. Sayuri earns twice the amount that Danuta earns, and the children together earn a total of $31. How much money does each child earn? Now, I want to emphasize here, this question you might be able to just figure out by using trial and error or just using a little bit of logic, okay? We're not going to do that because remember, we're trying to get all the marks, and one of the things your teacher will be looking for is an equation and a use of algebra to solve that problem. Because what we're really not doing is we're not learning how to solve this problem. We're using this simple problem as a way to learn to solve quite complex things in the real world using algebra. So we start with something easy that we can easily make sense of so that later, when we get harder problems, we can apply those skills of algebra and solve them. So make sure you use algebra, even if you're tempted to use another method. All right. So firstly, what is the question asking for? The question wants to know how much money does each child earn. So I'm taking a moment to think. I'm going to need 3 answers because there are 3 children. All right. Now I need to define my variable. I just want 1. I don't want to have a K and a D and an S for the amount that each child earns. I've got to pick one. So which one will I choose? I could choose Kevin or Danuta or Sayuri. So I'm going to look back at the information I've got. Kevin earns $3 more than Danuta, and Sayuri earns twice the amount that Danuta earns. So both Kevin and Sayuri's money is given in terms of Danuta's money. So I'm going to use Danuta as my variable so that I can write Kevin's amount in terms of Danuta and Sayuri's amount in terms of Danuta. So my first step is to define my variable. I always start with let D equal Danuta's amount. Remember that when you define your variable, it's got to be a number. So I'm not going to write let D equal Danuta because Danuta's a person and she's got a lot of numbers associated with her, like her age and her height and so on. So I've defined my variable as Danuta's amount, that's D. So now what I want to do is write all the information that I can in terms of the variable. So let's have a look at that. Kevin's amount, I don't want to write K. I'm just going to use the logic of words that I can easily understand. Kevin's amount is $3 more than Danuta. D plus 3, $3 more. I don't need any units in my equation. And Sayuri's amount is going to be, well, Sayuri earns twice the amount that Danuta earns. Twice means 2 times. So it's going to be 2 times D, which I just write as 2D. That's all I've got just in terms of that. But what I'm also going to do, just to help myself get this really clear, is write Danuta's amount equals D. So then I've got all the 3 children's amounts written in terms of D. I can now put that together with my last sentence. The children together earn a total of $31. So $31 is going to add up to Kevin's amount plus Sayuri's amount plus Danuta's amount. So what I'll do is I'm going to take the expression I wrote here for Kevin's amount, D plus 3, and put it underneath. And then I'm going to take Sayuri's amount, which is 2D, and put that here. And of course, Danuta's is just D. All right, where am I up to on my checklist? I've written all the information in terms of the variable. I've actually just made an equation without even trying. Look, this is 31 equals D plus 3 plus 2D plus D. Now, I wouldn't have had that equation if I'd skipped this last bit of information. The children together earn a total of 31. But I don't want to get to that information too soon. I needed this first. I didn't know what to do with this until I had this together. And so the total amount that they earn is this plus this plus this, and it all adds up to 31. I've got an equation. Step 5, solve the equation. Well, that's obvious. I've written an equation, now let's solve it. First, I'm going to simplify it. So I'll collect my like terms. D plus 2D plus D gives me 4D plus 3. All right, so 31 equals 4D plus 3. Now I subtract 3 from both sides, which will give me 28 equals 4D. Divide both sides by 4, that will give me 7 equals D. Oops, you can't see that. There we go. 7 equals D. So now I've found D, but remember what the question was? How much money does each child earn? After solve the equation is answer the question. So I know that Danuta earns $7. Kevin is D plus 3. Kevin earns 7 plus 3 is going to give me $10. And Sayuri is 2D, so that's double Danuta's. Sayuri earns, what did I say? Twice Danuta's, so that's $14. All right. I've answered the question. Oh, you can't see that either. So sorry. There we go. All right. Last step, and this one's really important. Check that your answer works with the original words of the question. Hopefully, I haven't made a mistake, but if I have, this step should help me to find it. I'm going to check my findings with the original words of the question. So I'm just going to read out the question. I'm told that Kevin earns $3 more than Danuta. Yes, that is true. I'm told that Sayuri earns twice the amount that Danuta earns. Yes, that's true. And I'm told that altogether they earn $31. Let's check it. 7 plus 10 gives me 17. Plus 14, well, if I add 10, that gives me 27. And then I add the 4, that gives me 31. They do. They add up to 31. So I've checked my answers in terms of the question given. So I've finished the question. Now, before you go, I want to give you this checklist. This is your checklist to get all the marks. Now, like I said, sometimes a teacher doesn't need you to define the variable. So if you don't do it, you won't lose a mark. Sometimes the teacher does need you to define the variable, so if you don't do it, you'll lose a mark. You'll never know when you're answering the question whether there's a mark attached to it. So just do it and then you'll never lose the mark. So let's check my work. Did I define my variable? Oops, there it is. Yes, I did. I said let D equal Danuta's amount. That's my variable defined. Did I write an equation? Yes, there it is. Guaranteed that your teacher is looking for an equation. Did I solve it? Yes, I did, and I found that D equals 7. Did I answer the question using words? Yes, I did. Not long, there it is. Not long, complicated sentences, just enough to communicate the important, essential information. I did answer the questions using words. Did I use units? I don't remember. Did I write dollars in my answer? Oh, I did. Aren't I good? Yes, I wrote dollars. Always check that just before you move on. Quite often teachers are pretty lax with that. Sometimes they get fussy and they take marks away if you don't put the units in. Always put the units in and you'll never lose the marks. So there's your checklist. And that's the end of our video on solving worded problems using algebra.